All right. Well, in this lesson, we're going to be looking at what's called solving for an unknown when there's only one variable. Okay, so we're going to be solving basically for a variable. We'll call that variable x. But to begin with, I want to talk about something. So in this video, I'm not going to be using the tiles that you might see elsewhere. Okay, so I'm going to teach this directly to the more traditional approach, so that way you can see right away how you can do this by hand without needing to use any extra tiles. There are times where using the tiles is going to be extremely useful, and for some people even using tiles in this case might be an alternative approach that might make it a little bit more simpler. But there's not always going to be times where you're going to have enough tiles and it might be more cumbersome to use those tiles. So that's why I'm going to teach this the traditional way. I mean, a lot of times I don't care for traditional, but in this one I am. So let's start out. First off, let's understand a key concept when solving an equation. An equation is like a scale. All right, your equal sign is like the middle of the scale. You want to keep both sides of the equation equal to each other. And sometimes we don't know what we're working with exactly. We have an unknown variable that we're trying to solve for. But the key to algebra, and that's the class that we're in, is that whatever you do to one side, you have to do the same thing to the other. Like for a scale. If I put something on one side of a scale without also putting the same weight on the other side of the scale is not going to be balanced. So the two sides will not be equal to each other. But if I add something to one side of the scale and I add the same weight to the other side of the scale, now the scale would be balanced and both sides would continue to stay equal to each other. And that is our goal when we're working with an equation. So you want to remember that. You also remember to want to take good notes, okay? Because this is where things are going to get a little bit more trickier for some of you. And so taking good notes is going to be really important. So remember, you can pause the video at any point. There's even going to be an example here in a little bit where I'm going to ask you to pause the video so that way you can work through an example on your own. So let's go ahead and look at what we're working with here. So the key concept, again, is when solving for an unknown, whatever you do to one side of the equal sign, you must do to the same the other side to keep both sides balanced. If you want to write that in your notes, that would be a good thing, but it may not be as necessary as, because sometimes seeing the words mean one thing, but actually seeing an example worked out will actually make more sense. So let's look at our first example. Oh my goodness, this looks like a lot. Well, remember, in a previous example, we talked about how, when I see M&Ms or Skittles, I like to sort them all out by color or by flavor. We're going to do the same thing here. We have two sides to the equal sign. So what we're going to do is we're going to sort out anything that has a variable and those that don't have variables. We're going to do that on both sides. Right now we're going to keep those separate. So on the left side of the equal sign, if we group together all the x's, we would have a 2x, a 2x, and a minus x. And then we would also have the numbers that don't have variables. We have a 3 and a minus 1. Let's continue with that on the left side. So if I simplify the left side, 2x plus 2x is 4x. But then if I take away an x from the 4x, I'd have 3x's. So now I have 3x, and 3 minus 1 is 2. So I'd have 3x plus 2 on the left. Now let's go to the right side of the equal sign. Let's do the same exact thing. So let's group together all the x's and group together those that are numbers without an x. So when we group together the x's, we would have an x, a 2x, and then a negative x. Okay, don't try to do too much at once. Sometimes people like to just jump right in and try to combine things and add things. Sometimes when we're first learning things, it's better to do this in multiple steps. So don't be afraid to do that. All right, now the numbers. We have a 2, we have a 3, and a minus 1. So we're going to group those up separately. Now when we look at those x's, we have x plus 2x would be 3x. But then we're going to take away an x from the 3x. So now we'd be left with 2x. The numbers. 2 plus 3 is 5. 5 take away 1 is 4. So we'd have 2x plus 4. So far, are you with me? Okay, if you need to go back and pause anything, please do that, because I want to make sure you understand it up through this point. All right, now moving on. So we have 3x plus 2 on the left, 2x plus 4 on the right. What we want to do now is we want to group together the variables to be on one side of the equal sign and the numbers to be on the other side of the equal sign. It doesn't matter which side you put the x's on. It doesn't matter which side you put the numbers on. Personally, I like to avoid negative numbers. So what I always like to look for first is what's the smallest variable? Which side of the equation has the smallest variable? So on the left side I have a 3x, on the right side I have a 2x. I want to get rid of the smallest variable. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. Now remember, if I subtract it from one side, to keep the equation balanced, I have to subtract it from the other side. This is where that scale comes in. Alright, so now on the left side, 3x take away 2x would just be 1x. And I want to bring down, just like you saw in that animation there, I want to bring down what's left over, the plus 2. We'll get to that in a second. On the right side, 2x minus 2x is nothing. So we don't have any more x's left over on the right, and that was the purpose of subtracting 2x. But on the right side, we are left with that 4, so we want to bring that 4 down. Okay, so now I have the x on one side. I want to get the numbers that don't have an x on the other side of the equal sign. So right now I'm adding 2. So to get rid of something in algebra, we always do the opposite. So right now, since I'm adding 2, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. And 2 minus 2 on the left side would be just 0, so we'll be left with just the x. On the right side, 4 minus 2 would be 2. We have our answer, x equals 2. So the next step, here's the great thing about algebra, unlike social studies or English or, well, maybe science includes math, but some of those other subjects, you just have to hope you have the right answer. On math, you don't have to find out if you don't have the right answer. You don't have to ask your parent, you don't have to ask your teacher. You can find out for yourself if you have the correct answer. Here's how you're going to do that. You're going to check your work. Now, for a lot of students, this seems really tedious. But please see past that part of it and recognize that this is how you know that you have it correct. So what we're going to do is we're saying that x is 2. So in the original equation, every time we see an x, we're going to replace it with 2. So let's do that. So on the left side, I'd have 2 times x, so x is 2, so it'd be 2 times 2, plus 2 times 2, plus 3 minus 1 minus 2. So all of that would be on the left. On the right side, we would do the same thing. We'd replace x with 2's. So we would have 2 plus 3, so there's no x's there, plus 2 times 2, minus 1, minus 2 again. All right, so now we're going to simplify the left and right side. Now, how do we know if we have it right? If the left side and the right side are the same, we know that we have the correct answer. So let's see what happens. When we simplify some of this on the left side, 2 times 2 would be 4. The other 2 times 2 would be 4. And then at the end there, the minus in the parentheses 2, that's just minus 2. Okay, so now we're going to add those together. So going from left to right. 4 plus 4 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11. 11 take away 1 is 10. 10 take away 2 is 8. So all of that long string of numbers simplifies to be 8. I got ahead of myself. Let's look at the other side now. So you can see I already did that simplifying. So the first 2 would just be 2. And then we had the 2 and the 3. We don't need to do anything with those. The 2 times 2 gave us 4. And then that was pretty much the rest. Okay, so now let's simplify the right side. Now if we did this correctly, the right side should also be 8. So let's check. 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 plus 3 is 7. 7 plus 4 is 11. 11 take away 1 is 10. 10 take away 2 is 8. Okay, now that's a lot of numbers to keep track of. That's why I went kind of slow there. If you need to go back and process that a little bit slower, you can. Hopefully you see that 8 equals 8. That's a true statement, so that means that we did get the correct answer, so x was equal to. All right, let's look at another problem. All right, so this one is a little bit smaller. So with this one, we're going to start just like we did the previous one. We're going to group together the variables and the numbers on the left side, group together the variables and the numbers on the right side. So let's start with the left side. We'll walk through this part together. So from the left side, we're going to group together, again, the variables would be 4x minus x plus 3x. Those are our variables. We're going to group those together. Then the plus 2, there's no other numbers on the left side, so the plus 2 is going to be lonely for the time being. Now let's finish that on the left side. So on the left side, 4x, take away 1x from 4x, and you'd have 3x. Then 3x plus 3x, would be 6x's. We'd have 6x plus 2. Now, I want you to work through the right side. So I want you right now to group together the variables on the right side and the numbers on the right side and simplify those. And then you can stop when you get to that point. So I want you to pause the video, got to pause it, and hit play when you're ready to check to see if you've done the right side correctly. Go. All right, let's see how you did. So on the right side, you should have had this. We grouped together the 5x, the minus 2x, and the x together. And the 9 and the minus 1 would be the only numbers without a variable. So we'll group those together separately. Let's see how you did with simplifying those parts. So 5x, take away 2x, would be 3x. 3x's, add one more x to it, you have 4x's. And then, 9 minus 1 would give us 8. So we'd have 4x plus 8 on the right. How'd you do? If you got any of that wrong, make sure that you figured out where your mistake was. Make sure you understand how to do that correctly. All right. So now we need to group together. So now when you get it to this point where we just have a single x and a number on one side, a single x and a number on the other side of the equal sign, your next step is to get all your x's on one side of the equal sign, all the numbers on the other side. Some teachers will always say, always put the x's on the left and the numbers on the right. I will never say that, because sometimes it's better to move the x's maybe on the right side instead of the left side, because it's always easier if you avoid negative numbers. So look for the smallest variable. We have 6x on one side, 4x on the other side. The 4x is the smallest one. So to get rid of it, we subtract it. That's simple. But remember, if you subtract 4x from one side, remember that scale, this is a scale. If we just subtract it from one side, our scale's not going to be balanced. So we got to subtract it from both sides to keep our scale balanced. Now 6x, take away 4x's, leaves us with 2x's. And then we bring down that 2 that we haven't done anything with yet. That poor 2, he's been lonely. We're going to get to him in just a minute. Now on the right side, 4x, take away 4x is gone, so there's no more x's. But the 8 is left over on the right. So now that 2 that's been lonely all along, we're going to move him over to the other side. Think for a second. Right now it's plus 2. If I want to get rid of it, what would I do to get rid of 2? What would I do to make that 2 a 0? Hopefully you're thinking minus or subtract 2. That's what we're going to do. We're going to subtract 2, but remember we're going to do that to both sides. And 8 minus 2 would be 6 on the right. And so we'd have 2x equals 6. Now we have to get rid of the 2. The 2 is being multiplied times x. So remember, we're looking to see what undoes multiplication. Or what's the opposite of multiplication? The opposite of multiplication, hopefully you're thinking of this, is to divide. So we're going to divide both sides by 2. The whole point of that is so that way we get the x by itself. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, so 1x is just x. Then on the right side, 6 divided by 2 is 3, so our answer is 3. Now remember, we also want to check our work. Okay, this is the tedious part, I admit. It's not the funnest part because now we have our answer. Why would we want to do more work with the same problem? But this is how we can make sure we got it correct. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to replace all of those x's with 3's. Right now we're just going to work through the left side, and then I'm going to have you work on the right side on your own. So on the left side, again, replace those x's with 3's. So 4 times 3 would be 12, and then the other 3 times 3 would be 9. The rest would just stay the same. So we'd have plus 2 minus 3 in between there. All right, so now let's simplify that. So 12 going from left to right. 12 plus 2 would be 14. 14 take away 3 would be 11. 11 plus 9 would be 20. So the left side simplifies to be 20. I want you to try the same thing now on the right side and see if you also get 20. So go ahead and pause the video. Replace each of those x's with 3's and simplify those. So pause the video and hit play when you're ready to check to see if you did it correctly. All right, how'd you do? Hopefully you got 20. Let's see. So if you replace each of those x's with 3's, it looks something like this. Now when we multiply those, so 5 times 3 would be 15. There in the middle we'd have negative 2 times 3, which would be negative 6 or minus 6. That might be kind of tricky. All right, so now in order from left to right, we would take 15 plus 9. Maybe you had to use your fingers there. You get 24. 24 minus 6, ooh, that's a doozy, is 18. 18 take away 1 is 17. 17 plus 3 is 20. So we got the same thing on both sides. All right, how are you feeling? You feeling confident? Whether you are or not, I want you to try this one on your own. Try as much of it as you can. Okay? Look back at your notes, follow those steps that you did on the previous examples, and apply those same steps here. So remember, the first step is to group them together by your variables and your numbers without variables. Do that to both sides and simplify those. And once you have where you just have an x and a number on one side, x and a number on the other side, get rid of the smallest x, and then get rid of the number to get the variable by itself, and do any other multiplying or dividing to get the x by itself, and find that value for x. So I'm really confident in you. I think you can do this. So I want you to pause the video. I want you to play when you're ready to check your answer. Or if you just get absolutely stumped and you're stuck at a point, I don't want you to get frustrated. So maybe at that point is when you can hit play. But I want you to try this one on your own. So go ahead and get started. All right. How'd you do? Did you get all the way to the end? Did you remember to check your answer? I didn't tell you to do that. Or did you get stuck? Let's find out in any of those cases how you did. Okay, so the first step is to group those together. So we'd have 2x and 5x and 2 plus 5. So 2x and 5x would be 7x, 2 plus 5 would be 7. On the right side, we'd group together our variables. Again, we'd have 8x take away 3x and 12 plus 3. Simplify those. 8x minus 3x is 5x, and the 12 plus 3 would be 15. All right, did you get that far? I hope you did. So now let's get rid of the smallest x. The smallest x would be the 5x. So I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides, and that would give me 2x plus 7 on the left, and on the right we would have just 15. All right, now to get the x by itself, I'd start by subtracting 7. So we subtract 7 from both sides. So we get 2x equals 8. Now I divide both sides by 2, and you get x equaling 4. How'd you do? Did you get that? I hope you did. I really hope you did. And if you struggled at any point, it's okay. You know, this is your first time in algebra. We're going to have a lot of practice, so no worries. All right, but then I want you to check your work. So let's see how you did with checking your work. Let's see what you get on both sides. So I'm waiting to show the answers. So we multiply everything by, or replace all of our x's with 4's. So on the left side, we'd have 8 plus 2 plus 20 plus 5. And if you simplify that, 8 plus 2 is 10. 10 plus 20 is 30. 30 plus 5 is 35. Do we get 35 on the right? Well, when we take 8 times 4, you get 32, and then negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. So we'd have 32 plus 12. Whew, that's a big one. 32 plus 12 would be 44. 44 minus 12 would be 32. 32 plus 3 would be 35. Now let's talk about calculators. It's up to your parents, so make sure you talk to your parents about this, but it's up to your parents to decide at what point to start using a calculator. Personally, at this point, I want students to make sure they understand the algebra concepts. Sometimes some students may struggle with the adding and subtracting numbers and dividing, and I want to make sure that they understand. There's going to be enough new things to be concerned about that I want to make sure that they understand those concepts. So I'm okay with students using calculators for some of these adding and subtracting, because 32 plus 12 minus 12 plus 3, that can be a lot for some students to try to manage in their head. And I don't want frustration. I want students to enjoy algebra. Algebra can be a really fun course. So personally, if you want to use a calculator because you struggle with some of this, that's okay with me. But talk to your parents first. So if parents, if you're watching this, that's my recommendation. I've been teaching math for 20 years, and it's something that I find can actually help students that maybe have struggled with math in the past to actually be able to enjoy algebra, something that may have been too complicated for them without using their calculator. But I'll let you decide that for your own family. So good luck now as you work on your assignments this week, and I hope you have a firm understanding now of how to solve some of these algebra equations. Good luck.